Well, good evening and welcome to the beautiful St Lucia campus at the University of Queensland. My name is Professor Katrina Lee Koo and I'm the head of school for the School of Political Science and International Studies in the Faculty of Humanities, Arts and Social Sciences. It is our great honour to host this evening's events, and I extend a warm welcome to our distinguished guests and to all of you here this evening. Please allow me to open this evening's proceedings by acknowledging the traditional owners and their custodians on the lands on which we meet. We pay our respects to their ancestors and to their descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections to country, and we recognise their valuable contributions to Australian and global society. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce our Master of Ceremonies for this evening, Mr. Siddharth Nagpakar.
Namaste, good evening ladies and gentlemen. It is my utmost privilege to be standing in front of you as the Master of Ceremonies for this evening's esteemed gathering. And I'm not going to delay it any further because it is my distinct honour to announce the arrival of our esteemed guest, the Honourable Dr. Subramaniam Jayashankar, Minister of External Affairs of India. Can I please request everyone to stand up and give him a big round of applause as we welcome him. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to extend a warm welcome to all the distinguished guests, Honourable Parliamentarians, Minister for Multicultural Affairs, Honourable Fiona Simpson, welcome, federal and state government dignitaries and officials, prominent business persons, community representatives, friends of India, students and members of the Indian diaspora. Your presence here today is a testament to the importance of the ties and the bond between our two nations. We're truly honoured to have with us today Honourable Dr. Jayashankar, Minister of External Affairs of India, who has made invaluable contributions to fostering partnerships and understanding between the two nations. Sir, your commitment to advancing India's diplomatic relations on a global stage have been exemplary, and it is our privilege to have you here today between us. With the ability to navigate through global challenges sporting a smile, you make diplomacy look easier than assembling furniture from IKEA. No instructions needed. Whether you're addressing world leaders or presenting at a press conference, we can always count on you to deliver insights with a side of humour, reminding us all that laughter can bridge even the widest divides. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, can you please join me in extending a very warm welcome to the visionary leader who continues to chart new paths. Who continues to chart new paths for India on a global stage. Now, as we're all from an Indian background, we know that no event can commence before we invoke the Lord and we take their blessings. So I would like to invite the performers from the Lalita Kalalaya School of Bharatanatyam to come onto the stage and grace us with a beautiful performance. Can we please put our hands together?
नमस्ते रुद्ररूपिणी नमस्ते रुद्ररूपिणी नमस्ते जाग्रतं हि महादेवे जपं सिद्धं पुरुषमे जाग्रतं हि महादेवे जपं सिद्धं पुरुषमे ऐङ्कारी सृष्टिरूपाणि ऐङ्कारी प्रतिपादिका नमस्ते मंत्ररूपिणी नित्यं नमस्ते मंत्ररूपिणी आं ह्रीं धूं धूर्जटे पत्नी वागरीश्वरी धाम ह्रीं धूं धूर्जटे पत्नी वागरीश्वरी गांगी कालिका देवी शांशी शुभ मे शुभं कुरु गांगी कालिका देवी शांशी शुभ मे शुभं कुरु ओम ओंकार रूपिणी जम 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 जम्बनादिनी ओम ओंकार रूपिणी जम 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 जम्बनादिनी ब्राह्मीं भूं भैरवी भद्रे भवान्यै त्वं नमो नमः पापीं भूं पार्वती पूर्णाकाङ्क्षीं भूं केचरी तदा शां शूं शूं सप्तशती देव्या मन्त्रसेदं कुरुष्व मे शां शूं शूं सप्तशती देव्या मन्त्रसेदं कुरुष्व मे सां ह्रीं रे सरिगां गमा गमग गदिग दिगम गमग मगदिसा की मा रे सरिगां गमा गमग गदिग दिगम गमग मगदि गरि दनिदा दिदनिदा दनिदा गगगगदि मम गगगद मम दिनि गरि दनिदा दिदनिदा दनिदा
Thank you to the incredible performers of that Devi Stuti in the form of a dance, a true celebration of the rich cultural heritage that connects us all. Now I'd like to invite onto the stage the Chancellor of University of Queensland, Mr. Peter Varghese, AO, for his remarks. If we can please have a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, thank you very much, Siddharth, and good evening to all of you. May I, as Chancellor, extend a very warm welcome to each and every one of you, and thank you for joining us here at the University of Queensland. I must say, looking out at this audience, our students seem to be getting a little bit older, which I'm going to put down to making significant headway in lifelong learning. It's a great pleasure for the university to host tonight Dr. Subramaniam Jayashankar, India's Minister for External Affairs. A very warm welcome to you, Minister, and to your delegation. And may I also acknowledge the Indian High Commissioner to Australia, Mr. Gopal Bagle, as well as the recently appointed Consul General of India in Brisbane, Ms. Nita Bhagotia. It's very good to have you here. And let me acknowledge Fiona Simpson, the newly minted Minister for Multicultural Affairs. Thank you for coming here so early in your tenure into what is a very multicultural environment at the University of Queensland. It's indeed fitting that we host Dr. Jayashankar here on the campus of the University of Queensland, which is Queensland's oldest university, a global top 50 university, if I can sneak in a bit of self-serving advertising, because education is now a significant part of the relationship between Australia and India. For UQ, India is a country in which we have made a strategic investment. We see India as a long-term partner. We have already established a joint research academy with IIT Delhi, which now has over 100 students enrolled in a joint PhD program. And here at our St. Lucia campus, we host some 1,300 Indian students, the majority of whom are postgraduates in STEM subjects. Our highest priority is to develop deep research partnerships with leading Indian institutions, partnerships which focus on the national challenges of each country, because innovation will be a key determinant of both our futures. In this way, our education ties with India are reflective of the broader strategy between our two countries, a strategy anchored in a growing convergence of interests, a recognition that we each have something to contribute to the other, and a commitment to take this relationship to new heights. In the last 2 decades, the Australia-India relationship has been transformed, and the headroom for further growth is considerable. The strategic distance, even indifference of the Cold War years, are now behind us. We are each grappling with the big challenges of our times. How do we construct a new strategic equilibrium in our shared Indo-Pacific region, which can manage the contest for primacy between the United States and China? How do we navigate towards a world which will be more multipolar, more divided on the merits of an open economy, more cautious about globalization, and more focused on national resilience? Our starting points as countries are inevitably a bit different. Australia is a close ally of the United States and a huge beneficiary of the global order it fashioned in the aftermath of the Second World War. India is deeply attached to its strategic autonomy, rightly insists that international rules must be agreed, not imposed, and aspires to be a pole in its own right in an increasingly multipolar world. But while our worldviews may not be identical, they are certainly compatible. And so the stage is set for this to become a partnership of substance, a comprehensive strategic partnership anchored in the most solid of foundations, shared interests. We see this as an expanding geopolitical partnership. We see it in the expanding geopolitical partnership. The foreign and defence policy dialogues, our military-to-military exercises, our shared membership of the Quad, the G20, the East Asia Summit, and the global multilateral institutions. And we see it in an expanding and complementary economic relationship. Indeed, there is no single market anywhere which offers more growth opportunities for Australia than India. Beyond strategic and economic interests, we are now also connected by a third force, which in the long term may prove to be the biggest single influence on the texture and rhythm of the bilateral relationship, namely the Indian diaspora. In the space of just 20 years, we have seen the diaspora grow from modest numbers to hit 1 million in a national population of 28 million. When my family first moved to Brisbane some 60 years ago, we could and did host almost the entire Indian community of Brisbane in our family home. Today, that would require entertaining some 90,000 guests. The Indian diaspora is a shared asset. It can go into the nooks and crannies of the relationship in a way governments cannot. It acts as both a business and cultural navigator for two societies which still only have a limited contemporary sense of the other. The diaspora is already making a substantial contribution to Australia. They are well educated, successful, community-minded, and politically aware. As I have noted elsewhere, only slightly tongue-in-cheek, they are likely over the next few decades to have the largest political influence in Australia of any diaspora since the Irish imprint on the Australian Labor Party. By contrast, the Indian diaspora influence is likely to be across both sides of Australian politics. This diaspora embrace of Australian politics is a legacy of India's secular liberal democratic character, which remains a crucial element in the way in which Australia defines its interests in India. Let me conclude with a few words about our guest of honour, from whom we will shortly hear. Dr. Jayashankar is the Foreign Minister from Central Casting. He has had decades of experience as a diplomat. He has held the most senior posts in the Indian Foreign Service. He is a deep thinker and an eloquent advocate for his country. Remarkably, he has found time as Foreign Minister to write books setting out the principles, objectives, and drivers of Indian foreign policy. He is one of the most highly regarded and influential foreign ministers on the international stage. Dr. Jayashankar and I overlapped for a few years as heads of our respective foreign ministries. He went on to assume ministerial office, enter politics, and deal with the high stakes of international diplomacy. I went on to be a university chancellor, and as Henry Kissinger once unkindly observed, the politics of universities are so intense because the stakes are so small. Minister, it's wonderful to see you again, and particularly wonderful to see you here on this campus. You're a most welcome guest, and we all look forward to your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Varghese, for your kind remarks. It is now my honor to invite His Excellency Shri Gopal Bagle Ji, High Commissioner of India, to formally introduce our esteemed guest, Honorable Dr. S. Jayashankar, Minister of External Affairs of India. Can we please make him feel welcome?
Let me begin, as is customary in Australia, to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land where we meet and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And as I often say, as we pay respect to our elders in India, and I also note with pride on such occasions that our head of state, the President of the Republic of India, is not just a woman, but from our tribal community. Honorable External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. Jayashankar, Chancellor, Honorable Peter Varghese, Minister Fiona Simpson, the Consul General of India, the first Consul General of India, that to a woman, here in Brisbane, my colleague Ms. Neetu Bhagotia, the members of the delegation of Honorable Minister, my colleagues from the High Commission and the Consulate, members of the faculty of this university, students, members of the Indian community, namaskar, very good afternoon to you, very good evening to you, sat shri akal, salam alaikum, shalom. Look, I have been given a task which I think is, I must be upfront about it, is clearly beyond me. For two reasons. There is a saying in Hindi, Suraj ko diya kaise dikha sakte hain? But believe me, I tried this, and I don't think I succeeded. That was 9 months ago in Perth, when the Honorable Minister had arrived very early in my tenure, I think 2 or 3 weeks, and 4 days after my presentation of credentials. Our DFAT colleagues did wonders, by the way, Chancellor. So that was the occasion when we had the honor and privilege to receive the External Affairs Minister on the shores, on the Australian shores of Indian Ocean. And 9 months later, sir, we have the honor and privilege to receive you here in Brisbane on the Pacific coast of Australia. So this link, Indo-Pacific, was alluded to by the Chancellor very eloquently, who also lessened my burden as a senior colleague in diplomacy by saying a few words about the minister. So what I would like to do is essentially mention to you that this is a great honor that we have Dr. Jayashankar amidst us. A second time in my tenure, just about 9 months. It does show us the attention, this relationship, this growing relationship with a lot of headroom, as Chancellor mentioned. This relationship receives not only from him, but our senior leadership. And I would say not just the leadership in India, but I think the leadership in Australia also. And we have our colleagues from DFAT here. And this is a relationship which is growing, and one of the reasons why it is growing, also Chancellor mentioned, is the people. And sir, we are here in Brisbane. You will tell this audience why you are here and what will be the highlight tomorrow. I shall not steal the minister's thunder. No public servant should. But also, I would say that this is a relationship, as Chancellor mentioned, growing because of the people and for the people. They are at the front and center of it, whether it is the Indian diaspora, whether it is the Indian students, the research scholars about whom the Chancellor spoke a short while ago to the minister. And I have had personal great experience of interacting with some of you who are sitting there. Some recognizable faces. After all, this is my 5th or 6th visit to Brisbane in 9 months. Not a bad frequency, I would say, Neetu. This is a land which is growing in significance, and not just because Brisbane will be the Olympic city in 2032, not just because it will host one of the test matches of the forthcoming Alan Border and Sunil Gavaskar cricket series, not just because it will also host the Indian women's cricket team, but also because it is now the leading trade partner between India's, with India, it is leading Australia's trade and trade relationship between India and Australia. A leading state in terms of the resources, in terms of the talent pool, and therefore, I won't say that it is, I think it is right time that we have a consulate general over here and an able consul general. I thought that would call for some applause. Not for me, to be clear, for the Consulate General. But if I could come back to the task which I have been assigned and which I have predicted I would fail in, which is to introduce the Honorable Dr. Jayashankar. I said that one of the reasons is that Chancellor has already said a few words about him very eloquently, and the other is, Suraj ko diya dikhana bada mushkil kaam hai, namumkin hi hai. But let me just mention to you that it has been a great privilege for me and many of my colleagues, peers, seniors, and juniors, to have a minister like him, to work under his guidance, his mentorship which is so steady and yet you don't feel it. But you see the difference that it makes. 4 decades in diplomacy, and thereafter in public life. In India, a country of 1.4 billion people, as our Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi said, a country of 1.4 billion aspirational people. To represent its voice, to represent its aspirations, to represent its dreams on the world stage is no mean task. And I don't think Mother India could have had a better son to do that today. I don't think I can add anything to what you already know about him. His ambassadorial assignments in some of the most important and challenging places for India, his diplomatic assignments abroad, as well as in India, the responsibilities he has held not only in the Ministry of External Affairs, but in the highest office of the country. They all make up a career which is not just illustrious, but has served the country in the finest possible way, in the most glorious manner. And today, as the new India emerges, as New India moves towards 2047, the 100 years of India's independence, when we have the task by when to be Viksit Bharat, a developed country, I think our foreign policy, and just not foreign policy, what we try to achieve through foreign policy, 4 things: people, prosperity, progress, and partnerships. These are being forged under the guidance of our Prime Minister and in the Foreign Ministry and in association with our international partners by Dr. Jayashankar. Ladies and gentlemen, you know that Dr. Jayashankar is author of 2 books, alluded also to by the Chancellor. In the second book, which came out, I think, earlier this year, it's called Why Bharat Matters, in the concluding chapter, there is a passage which I would quote with the minister's permission. I begin the quote. A civilizational state is once again on the move. This is about India. A civilizational state is once again on the move. This rise will unfold in consonance with its traditions and values. Its achievements have inspired a new sense of pride, especially among the younger generation. With each passing day, it is becoming clearer that India matters because it is Bharat. It is my great pleasure to introduce with these words as I would say in Hindi, उस भारत के विदेश मंत्री जिसके यशस्वी प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी हैं, उस भारत के मनस्वी विदेश मंत्री डॉक्टर एस जयशंकर सर.
My old friend, Chancellor Peter Verghese, Minister Fiona Simpson, High Commissioner Gopal Bagle, Consul General Neetu Bhagotia, friends. Namaskar, and first of all, my Deepavali greetings to all of you. And I want to say that for me, it's something very special today. I'm on my first visit to Brisbane. And I think with the High Commissioner's support and nagging, it certainly won't be my last. Now, looking back, I must tell you, I think this is my 5th visit to Australia in the last 3 years, if I'm right. Now, that's not so bad really, you know, for someone whose knowledge of Australia when I joined the Foreign Service was limited to my 7th class geography, to the first test match I watched of Bob Simpson and Bill Lawry team visiting India, and to an attempt to get admission into an Australian university, which was not unsuccessful. I didn't take it. Unfortunately, it wasn't UQ, so that probably was the sum total of what Australia would have meant to me when I was in my early 20s. Now, if I fast forward that, maybe almost till the end of my foreign service career, I don't think it meant very much more. I first actually came to Australia when I was Foreign Secretary, right at the end of my career. And so when I reflect on this relationship, and yesterday, in fact, before boarding the flight, I was releasing a book in India called Friends. It was written by someone who highlighted, I mean, this is their view, highlighted what they believed were 7 crucial friendships for India. And Australia was one of them. And I told them, I told the author that had you written that book 10 years ago, I'm not sure it would have been. Now don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with you folks. I'm saying this because I'm trying to stress really how much this relationship has changed in the last decade. And why has it changed? I think, in a sense, from what you heard from Chancellor Verghese and from the High Commissioner, I would say there are 4 reasons. 1, Prime Minister Modi. 2, Australia. 3, the world. And the 4th, all of you. That is the reason why the relationship has come the long way that it has. Now, you will notice that I mentioned Prime Minister Modi, and I did so for a particular reason. I still remember very, very early on after he had become Prime Minister, one of my early conversations with him, I was then ambassador in the US. He posed a question to me. This was in 2014. He actually asked me, saying, explain to me, you've been at that time 38 years, 37 years in foreign service. Why hasn't our relationship with Australia developed? Because it has everything going for it. There is such a natural fit, there's a language bonding, there's a shared culture, tradition. And yet somehow, something's not happening. And I must tell you that day, I had no answer. I had no answer because perhaps I had not reflected on it myself. And maybe even if I had, I didn't probably realize that at the end of the day, things don't happen automatically. They need effort, they need leadership, they need vision. They need people, governments, leaders at both ends to keep working at a relationship. So when I present to you today a picture of this transformation of the last decade, this didn't happen when the India-Australia vehicle was on autopilot. It happened because people have worked at it. At both ends, there's been a realization of the value of these ties, great efforts at building it, bit by bit, block by block, different aspects of it. I mean, you've heard some of it, the business, the defense, the security, the education. But most of all, I think if you look at these crucial relationships that we have today, when we have a, which is what all of you are, I think that gives the relationship such an effective pathway to grow that there's really no substitute for it. So I come today not just to formally inaugurate a consulate tomorrow in Brisbane, but to actually thank you all, because it is your presence, it's your effort, it's your contribution which has actually made the consulate possible. And not least, I should say, I've come to redeem Prime Minister Modi's promise made in public that he will open a consulate in Brisbane. Now, it's perhaps a bit obvious to explain to people who live in the Sunshine State what your contribution is to the relationship. But coming here, I must say, I was impressed. I believe today there are, my figures could be a little bit dated, but I think about 125,000 people of Indian origin who live here. Would that be right? I think a little bit more, Peter, than when you started off. And I'm told about, 15,000, 16,000 students roughly in the state. What impressed me was 75% of the exports of Australia to India are actually from the state. And most of our major companies, I saw a very, very distinguished list, are present here in some form. And I learned today that probably the avocados that I eat in Delhi are probably from Queensland. So I think, you're doing your fair share, but it will never be enough. It will never be enough because we have to keep working at it. This relationship has just begun. Think of it, the last 10 years, actually, we should treat not as an achievement, but as a glimpse of what is possible, I think what we have in a way done is to put in place a certain framework in which this relationship will grow and foster in times to come. So what is that framework that we have put in place? I think again, both Peter and Gopal referred to it. Today, when we, as India, look out at the world and say which are our crucial, really important foreign policy platforms or mechanisms, I don't think there's any doubt that the Quad would rank right up there. And Australia is our founding partner of that mechanism. In terms of our bilateral ties, in diplomacy, you kind of come up with words which are a signal to your own system, to other people, and the more adjectives you add, the weightier it gets. So when we speak today of a comprehensive strategic partnership today, this is a description. In bureaucraties, it has a meaning. It's not with every country that we would use those terms. In fact, there will be very select countries to whom we would accord, that description of the relationship. And Australia happens to be one of them. We spoke about trade. The fact that we were able to conclude an economic cooperation and trade agreement, ECTA, and the big jump that we see today in the trade, not just the avocados, a lot of other stuff. That too is a sign of what has changed, what are the doors that have opened. But then when one looks at a domain which many of you would be directly connected to, when I look at the mobility and migration agreement, when I look at the mutual recognition agreements that I have, when we speak about the MATES program, when I hear about UQ and IIT Delhi having this strong relationship. In fact, to me, a lot of this are these are possibilities foretold in Chancellor Varghese' report a decade ago, which we actually are today realizing in great measure. So there is an immense possibility there. And I will come back to this aspect later, but I was particularly pleased that we've just had the visit of our Education Minister, Dharmendra Pradhan, because I do believe that education and research will play a disproportionate role in the sort of knowledge economy and the era of AI into which we are now entering. In my own more orthodox domain, I think there are many other platforms on which we work. It's natural for big countries, for any countries for that matter, to deal with each other in the United Nations, because we are both Indian Ocean, Indo-Pacific countries. In the East Asia Summit, we are members of the Indian Ocean Rim Association. So the short point is actually things are coming together. The structures are there, the platforms are there, the right people are meeting with the right occasion, right regularity, things are happening. And on the ground, this is not airy-fairy things. These are very practical things which eventually get translated into numbers, whether they are trade numbers, whether they are education numbers, whether they are research projects, whether there's tourism, or whether it is our joint effort at making the Indo-Pacific safer for all of us. And I would say particularly, the manner in which our defense collaboration has grown in the last decade has been really very impressive. There are a number of occasions where our military work together very closely. And the extent today of the cooperation is something we couldn't have even imagined 5-10 years ago. So if I were to take it on from there, that if we are to work together, if we are to learn from each other, what would be some key areas? And to my mind, I think there are 3 or 4 which stand out. One, obviously, is our economic complementarity. Given the nature of our economies, your economic activities and strengths in Australia will fit in many ways to what would be the requirement of an India that would be growing at 7 to 8% or more for decades to come. So what we have seen, to my mind, I think we are today your fourth largest trade partner, but I can see really this expand both in terms of volume as well as go up in ranking. And I sincerely believe that how we increase the economic cooperation, encourage more businesses, and I will myself in this visit be meeting the business community to push that particular message. A derivative of that is actually in some ways the demographic fit, that we are moving to an era where it is important to get the demographic demand and supply right. And particularly because, a lot of the key economic activities are actually going to be research and technology driven. This will acquire a degree of importance, even greater importance than it does today. But if I could look at some other aspects, tourism, for example, that I understand, I think Queensland is host to 5 natural heritage sites. Now, India today is making a big push in terms of tourism. Considering our potential, we believe that tourism, particularly international tourism, still has a lot of headroom to grow. There are, collaborations here that are possible. Sports has been mentioned. We look with great interest towards the 2032 Olympics. We ourselves have our aspirations towards 2036. Cricket is always there for us to talk about. And I'm particularly conscious that this is the state of Allan Border. So when we speak about the Border Gavaskar Trophy, I think it's particularly relevant. So I want to give you that message that our relationship, in a way, has just begun. That there are immense possibilities that we have today. Treat these 10 years as a foundation. This is a foundation which all of you and all of us together have to build on. We see in every domain, there are, honestly, about the only thing we now argue about in a divergent way is probably cricket. But in almost every other area, we actually today see strong complementarities and strong convergence. Now, having said that, I know many of you all follow developments back at home with a great deal of interest. So I thought I could spend a little time talking about that as well. You all know we had our elections this summer. And the third term of the Modi government is now approaching about 150 days. Because it is the third term, and I guess in a way because it is Modi, we've actually hit the ground running. If you look at the last 150 days, it's been a very, I'd say, almost a frantic pace at which decisions, initiatives, programs have happened in the country, many of them with a far-reaching implication. If I were to pick 2 or 3 sort of big goals, I would say right now, one of them certainly would be how to create, how to keep up the pace of growth, but make it much more employment-driven. How to today become competitive in an overall sense. And how do we board that manufacturing bus that we missed in the past and today board it in a way in which we are not left behind in terms of the global technology progress. I think to me these would be some of the key concerns, not the only concerns. I mean, I would say equally, especially after all the uncertainties that we saw during the COVID period today, health security and food security would be very important. So again, many of the decisions that we have taken relate very directly to those. But the result of this set of priorities that I have laid out actually has been a decision to take forward 12 industrial zones across the country, to double down on infrastructure building, especially connecting it to these industrial zones, and to prepare the human resources which are necessary for that manufacturing capability to grow and for those technology strengths to advance. So if you look, if you recall really the budget speech of Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, a lot of it was really about growing more skills institutions, increasing the number of tertiary education centers, improving the quality of schools, encouraging internships in a greater way, asking businesses to become partners of this enterprise. So this today is in a sense, I would say, the key priorities of the third term of the Modi government. Now, in the last 10 years, we believe we have made very significant progress. And I would attribute the progress to the fact that we have embarked on a series of efforts which feed into each other, making it much easier to do business in the country, improving the ease of living, which is reducing the bureaucratic load on the average citizen, radically improving the infrastructure through a program called Gati Shakti, which in fact has a very strong application of multiple kinds of technologies. Putting in place what has been a remarkably effective digital public infrastructure, and I'd like to share some thoughts with you about that. Improving the quality of governance overall, and in my view, actually ensuring the political stability which allows for decisions taken to be implemented in full and for new decisions to build on earlier ones. Now, I put this to you in terms of a description, but often I'm in situations where I have 5 minutes to impress somebody from abroad who wants to know, okay, what's happening in India. So I want to give you that 5-minute description. Actually, it's not even 5 minutes, probably 1 minute. I tell people, please understand today's India. Today's India, if I were to pick 5 numbers, is building 28 kilometers of highway every day. It's building 12 to 14 kilometers of railway track every day, quite apart from the Vande Bharat trains which have been introduced, which I would invite you to ride on next time any of you are in India. Which had 6 cities with metros a decade ago, which has 21 today, and we are planning an additional 39 to take. Which has on average built 7 to 8 new airports every year for the last decade. A decade ago we had 75 airports, today we are close to 150. Which, by the way, as a result of all of this, has about 1,000 planes on order from the international aviation industry, which has actually doubled down on its education system. Now, this gives you a kind of a snapshot of the changes underway. Now, it's not my contention that those are adequate. On the contrary, aspirational India today demands that, these are seen in many ways today as basic requirements. So, we are addressing a lot of legacy needs, but certainly we hope that the expectations of society actually lead to higher performance and higher delivery in this regard. Now, this is one part of the change which has happened. The other part of the change is probably less visible to many of us. Less visible because many of us come from middle class families, mostly urban. So we don't directly always experience, and I'm sure there may be some exceptions here. We don't always directly experience how the digital public infrastructure actually has delivered, particularly outside urban areas, including in urban areas, but also to those who are, I would say, of a lower income and who are socio-economically more vulnerable. And again, I want to give you some ideas of numbers. We have a program to build houses to those whose income levels are low. In the last 10 years, 35 million houses have been built and delivered, which means about, roughly given Indian family size, which means about 160 million people are living in houses today which they did not have a decade ago. Let's look at health. You know, some of you may have heard of a scheme called Ayushman Bharat. Now, the idea is to provide free or subsidized health care for those who are deserving. The users of this today number 530 million, which is roughly, I mean, you know the numbers, about a little more, about 40% of the total population. You know also that there are a lot of people who depend on government rations, on public food distribution for their nutrition. Now, during the COVID period, we took a decision that we would expand the nutritional support because at that time a lot of people, in fact, had a loss of employment or income. Today, we give direct food support to 815 million people, which is almost 2/3 of the country. Water, which in many, developed societies would be taken for granted, but again, those of you who remember some of the circumstances in some parts of India know it's been a challenge. That actually roughly about little more than 1/3 of the country, 500 million people have been covered by what is called the Jal Jeevan Mission. And even if you look in terms of entrepreneurship, the small loans that are given out, and a disproportionate number of these are actually given out to women. In the last decade, close to about 350 million loans have been given out. So I put this to you, that this is not just a society, which is changing at a sort of a visible level in the urban areas, in those places where you would naturally go to when you go to India. But if you go even to remote areas, if you go out of big cities, if you travel around the country today, it really hits you, the extent of change. And I must tell you, as a person who lives in India, when I go to Gujarat, where I'm elected, and I travel around in the district, which is a predominantly tribal district that I have a certain responsibility for, I can actually see these things happening on the ground. And perhaps the most startling change is actually the UPI, the cashless transaction. We just had last week the Prime Minister of Spain, Pedro Sanchez, and Prime Minister Modi was explaining to him how it works. And we encouraged him when he went to Mumbai to use one of our phones to do a transaction himself. I think he bought a Ganapati idol. But when you tell people that the cashless transactions today in India, the UPI transactions number 12 to 13 billion a month. And the American, I'm giving you a comparative figure. The US does 4 billion a year, 4 or 5 billion a year. So you have to understand today how deeply actually the digital medium has been embraced in Indian society. So when we speak today about how education will change things, how good governance can make a difference, what are the aspirations of a society. A deeply digital people have the ability today to make that kind of big jump, which we expect to see happen in the coming decade. So I want to, share with you that today's India is very clearly driven by technology, by a very willing, I would say almost a passionate embrace of its possibilities, not just by researchers and academics and, by you can say big businesses. It has actually been embraced by the people. That if street vendors start using, QR codes for payments, something has changed. Something big has changed. And to my mind, the possibilities there for the country's progress are enormous. Now, while we speak of technology, I think you would have also heard Prime Minister Modi's emphasis that technology and tradition should go hand in hand. We are a civilizational state. We have a long history, culture, tradition, heritage. It's important that this is nurtured because at the end of the day, it's basic to our identity. And again, in an era of globalization, it cannot be assumed that this is self-sustaining. So here too, I would say efforts are being made. I mean, at a local level, this initiative of what is called One District, One Product, to encourage every local area to produce and market and take pride in what they have historically been, their product or their skill or their craft. We had another initiative called Vishwakarma, which is to actually give support to the crafts people of India, because in the modern era, often the crafts tend to disappear. They are overwhelmed by industrial scale production. Or the decision we just took a few weeks ago of promoting giving more languages the status of classical languages and promoting their teaching and their spread. So for us, it's important that we foster technology, we take the country forward using all the tools and opportunities it provides. But at the same time, we also nurture our traditions, we maintain our culture, and we keep, in a sense, the balance between the two. Now, having said that, I want to come back really to the foreign policy domain. I think perhaps it was the High Commissioner who mentioned that for us, foreign policy is it's not only a business of interacting with other countries. India will grow, India is growing, but India wants to grow with the world. When we look at the world, we see opportunities. We are optimistic. There may be problems, but overall, we think the world has goodwill, the world has a desire to work with India. We see a sentiment overall in the world for India to succeed, and it's important we harness that sentiment. So a lot of what we do with the world today is really to explore opportunities with the world. Education and research is one example of that. Another, and again, this is a very interesting phenomenon which is gathering steam in India. There are an estimated 1,800 to 2,000 global capability centers which have been set up by foreign companies in India, where people, in a sense, are part of a global workforce, but located in India. And there is, in fact, I think, a report, a Deloitte report, if my memory serves me right, which says that their businesses they generate today is in excess of $150 billion. And most of that is actually exports. I mentioned that to you because it's very clear that the world is moving towards a global workforce. In fact, much of the discussions today we have in foreign policy are about arrangements, understandings about how to create, manage, and move a global workforce to everybody's satisfaction. There are inevitably social sensitivities. I mean, that is something we need to recognize as well. But at the end of the day, we do believe that, the image today of Indians abroad, the image of being well educated, of being, so personally responsible, of the work ethic, the family-centric nature of our lives. I think the combination of all of this today makes us very, very attractive in the global workplace. And I think it's important that that brand is developed, that those skills are nurtured, that we actually use diplomacy as a way of growing the global workplace to mutual satisfaction. And again, I emphasize that this era, this era of AI, of electric mobility, of chips, this will require a global workforce. I mean, the countries where there are technologies, the countries where there are demands are not the countries where there are talents and skills. Somewhere this needs to be triangulated and made much more effective, and I think there's a growing realization of that requirement. So let me finally end again with our own relationship. I, of course, tomorrow after a day here, I go on to Canberra and then to Sydney. Part of my mission here is obviously to deepen our bilateral relationship, the political side, the defense and security side, the business side. I will be visiting disaster response warehouse here because, again, when we speak of working together and doing things for the world, those are the kind of things today which India and Australia do. I mean, very recently there was a horrendous mudslide in Papua New Guinea. And one of the reasons we could deliver Indian material, relief assistance, was because the Australians helped to deliver it to Papua New Guinea. Now, this wouldn't have happened. People wouldn't have even thought of it in an earlier era. So how do we today keep the region safer, better? How do we work for global good? May sound like nice words. Often these are real decisions which require ground activities. So a lot of my efforts would be to keep all of that going. But once again, I do want to say, for me, it's a moment of great satisfaction that I'm here to formally inaugurate a new consulate general in a country. In a country where I would surely rank today among our foremost friends. So once again, thank you all. You've taken the trouble to come on a Sunday evening. I truly appreciate that. And I look forward, Chancellor, particularly to the education and the research side of our relationship. I'm very confident that it will grow. Thank you again.
Thank you, Honourable Minister, Dr. Jayashankar, and on behalf of everybody in the audience, we would also like to wish you a very, very happy Diwali. I would like to invite His Excellency Mr. Gopal Bagle ji to now come onto the stage and moderate a question and answer session. We will have some staff from the University of Queensland, Daphne and Rachel, coming around with a couple of mics. So let's start the session. Thank you very much. And just a small reminder, if you can, please put your phone. That would be hugely appreciated. Thank you.
Hello. So we'll take 2-3 questions in the first round, and then I see a lot of hands going up. My request is, whoever gets the floor, please the mic could reach them, and please introduce yourself. So the gentleman right at the back, yeah, there.
My name is Harshit. I'm doing Master of Data Science in UQ. My question is, what is the golden advice you would like to give to an Indian seed which is being nurtured in the soil of Australia?
Okay, so that's fine. The lady there, yeah, this side, thank you.
Namaskar, my name is Jayashankar. I'm the Executive Director of Persons Media of Asia Pacific Limited. I have one question for you, sir. When we are trying to bring a transformation in the society, it's always hard. There is immense resistance to change. And I would like to get some tips and advice from you as to what we need to do to make that change smoother. Thank you.
Right here in the front row.
My name is Ram Mohan. I'm the editor of Australia India News. Thank you, Minister, for a wonderful speech. My question is to relation to the soft diplomacy on peace, what's going on with the war and India's role on the peace in the region as well as in the world. Thank you.
The boy in the glasses. Yeah.
Hello, sir. My name is Shivam, and first of all, it's a fanboy moment. So it's an honor to be here, and I would like to thank you and Consul General of India for organizing this. And my question is, it's a two-part question, sorry, sir. Dr. Jayashankar, 2 years ago, using UQ Union as a platform, we launched a small initiative called Global Rates to connect local and international students and advocating for a more harmonious society. It's been rewarding to see the impact it has had so far. But as we look to expand and reach even more students, we are keen to hear your insights on how to take it to the next level. Additionally, as a UP graduate and someone deeply interested in the growing relationship between India and Australia, I would like to know what steps I can take personally on my personal level to contribute to this important connection. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to club in a way your question with the first one. So, look, what can Indians who come here as students or as professionals do to both contribute in Australia, strengthen the relationship, advance their own prospects? My own sense is that when countries are very comfortable with each other, it actually makes it so much more easier for the people because it's much easier to be a good bridge between two ends which are getting along well with each other than when it's not. So today, bear in mind, when I spoke at some length about the global workplace, honestly, a global workplace is being formed. Global workplace is being formed because, one, skills and talents are mobile. Secondly, tasks and work is also mobile. So a lot of tasking could come to India without people leaving India. A lot of work gets done outside India by people moving out of India. So in a much more, I would say, globalized work environment, much more mobile work environment, where overall, the nature of economic activities are actually going to get far more creative in a way. Because the reality is, 5 years from now, we are probably not going to recognize almost any activity which today we are doing. Because that is actually going to be the kind of intensity of change that we are contemplating today. In this kind of world, I do think that, the more you do for your own, in your particular domain or line of work, the more achievements you have, the more respect you earn, the contribution you make, not just, to personal reputation, yes, but to overall branding of a country, of a society, of a people, the more effective a kind of a bridge that you cultivate. And I would say here students, young people, professionals have particularly that responsibility, that the impact that they have on society is huge. People in the government will do their jobs, okay? We live in a way like a silo. We might make decisions which have implications for other people, but at the end of the day, in any society, when you think about a country, you put a face or an experience to that country. You are all the faces and experiences which Australians will be using as a reference point. So I do think today, if the seed flowers, believe me, that tree is an Indian tree, it's an Australian tree, in a way it's a global tree today. That, we need to have that sort of larger, collaborative kind of vision in our mind. In terms of the resistance to change, yes, there are two problems really. One is habit and one is vested interest. That people, if you're doing the same thing again and again, and I come and ask you to do it differently, your instinct is to resist. Now, if you have an interest or somebody else has an interest in your doing it the old way, it's going to harden your attitude. So, one of the challenges we have found in terms of transformation in India, and in a way I could say in public delivery, interestingly, the Foreign Ministry itself has been one of the pioneers of this effort. When I started out in the government, in the locality where I lived, I was known as the guy who could talk to somebody to get you a passport. Okay? Because it was very difficult to get a passport. Okay. So, and in fact, I was talking to someone, this happens to be my contemporaries, you would have people didn't even give it in through the formal process, because you would have, touts or intermediaries who made it a business. Now, from making it so hard, and when you travel out, others wouldn't believe it, that sometimes it would take you months, if not years, and sometimes you never got a passport. Now, if you look today at how something like that has changed so dramatically, that today people get it within days, there are a variety of reasons for it. One is that you ask them for documentation which is digital, they provide it. You don't have to physically do many of the checks which you had to. You actually cut out the intermediaries who are making a good living in the process. But, it looks so easy. I must tell you, it was very hard to do actually on the ground. Many of these changes were done when I was Foreign Secretary. My minister was Sushma Swaraj. And, we would keep meeting and we'd keep taking feedback from different passport officers about the speed at which they give. We look, my office, I think every week, we get from every passport office saying, okay, give me the number of cases pending, how many days do you take? Because we know, we know that if you do not make this into a habit, because at the end of the day, if the person applying for the passport and the person giving the passport finally get into the habit that you're supposed to do it without other considerations, it will happen. But it isn't easy. Now, at every stage, when I spoke about giving housing or allowing people health entitlements or even giving food, how much of the food in the ration shops actually never reached the person for whom it was intended. Now, the moment you make it digital, the moment you have the ability to check, you actually have developed a kind of infrastructure. It still doesn't happen automatically. You still have to change the And this is where, to me, one of the good things I see, I like this aspirational India because it holds people to account. People will not put up with things which they would have put up with 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And that's a good thing in our country. The peace question. Look, right now, there are many ways I could answer it, but there are right now, I think, two conflicts which are in everybody's mind. One is Ukraine, and one is what is happening in the Middle East. In different ways, we are trying to do something in both. With regard to Ukraine, we we feel strongly, not just us, we believe that the 125 countries of the global south are feeling the distress, the pain of this conflict. It affects their lives as well. We think that there has to be some kind of serious effort to come back to diplomacy. So we are making our effort here, and Prime Minister personally is involved in that. He went to Russia in July, and then he went to Ukraine in August. He met President Zelensky separately once in June and once in September. We again had a meeting last month, with President Putin in Kazan. We feel that, look, the rest of the world should not throw up its hands and say, okay, let's wait for them to slug it out and one day they'll get tired and something will happen. Because every day there is a cost to the world, apart from the cost to these countries and to the region. So it is a situation which does call for some degree of, activity, of proactive diplomacy. We are trying to do that. When we began doing it, I think there was a certain degree of skepticism, to be honest. I would say today there is a much greater understanding, especially among Western countries. We are doing what we are doing. We have very strong support from the global south as well for our endeavors. So we are, hoping that through multiple conversations we are able to create some common ground so that some beginnings of diplomacy can resume. The situation with the Middle East is very different. At the moment, the effort is more to prevent the conflict from spreading. And here, one of the gaps is the inability of Iran and Israel to talk to each other directly. So different countries are trying to see if they can, bridge that gap. We happen to be one of them. But certainly these are both today very worrying situations. And, in a globalized world, really conflict or instability anywhere has implications everywhere. I mean, you see that in inflation, you see that in energy, in food, in disrupted supply chains. So that's one of the reasons we are approaching it the way we are.
Back over there, please. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. This is a fanboy moment for me as well. And first of all, I would like to welcome you in Brisbane and wish you a very happy Diwali from Brisbane Dholtasha Mandal. I am Dr. Kiran Mahale, a chief scientist of a company that produces material for defense and renewable energy storage purposes. My question to you is, the Congress MP from Thiruvananthapuram, Mr. Shashi Tharoor, has introduced a bill in Indian Parliament about the dual citizenship to overseas Indians. What is your view on that, and if that is going to happen in reality?
The lady in the yellow sari, please. Yeah.
Good evening, sir. My name is Rekha Swami. I'm a geopolitical enthusiast. My question to you is the recent development between India and China. Where do you see, do you think the world order is changing and the power is shifting between, from west to east? And where do you see Australia and Quad sit in this grand scheme of things? Thank you.
One last question is now to the gentleman in the jacket over here, peach color. Yeah.
Sir, good evening. We are all very honored with your presence and your speech. I'm hoping we can take some more inspiration away. I'm a cardiologist. My name is Dr. Gaikwad. I work at the Charles Hospital. You live a very stressful life. Lots of difficult decisions to make. Many competing priorities. How do you maintain your health? What do you do for yourself?
The first issue about dual citizenship. There are about 34, 35 million persons of Indian origin or citizens of India today living outside the country. It's very likely this number will grow because, as I said, the global workplace is an inevitability which will increase these numbers. So I do think that this is an issue which will bear very serious consideration, that what happens when so many people from a society live outside its boundaries. Because, one thing we do know, that however long someone from India has lived abroad, often it's multiple generations. I've been to countries like Guyana or Trinidad, Tobago, or even Fiji here. They still retain a very strong feeling towards the motherland. Now, that feeling is something we treat as something of utmost value. So, we would certainly want that bonding to continue, and not every people and every country has that kind of relationship. Often, the diaspora can have a very complicated, not easy relationship with the country of origin. So, we know today that the diaspora is something of inestimable value for us. So, how do we find the necessary legal, I would say legal and administrative framework to deal with that? About 2 decades ago, during the prime ministership of Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, they felt they had found a kind of a midpoint in this idea of an overseas citizenship. So many of the the facilities and the rights which a normal citizen would get were given, some were not. And a lot of what was not given, some of it was political rights and some of it was certain property related issues. Now here again, times have changed. Many more people, for example, have financial interests of various kinds. So I would really, in all honesty, tell you that I think this has to be, this is not such an easy issue to resolve, because any decision you take also has, some downside to it, some angle which, a legal angle. Do you want, Do we, for example, not discriminate among countries of the world? Would that leave us open to other vulnerabilities? There will be issues. They are legitimate issues. But I do think that in the committees that we have on external affairs, and Mr. Tharoor happens to be chairing one of them at the moment, in other forums, in fact, in the parliament itself, these are live debates, they are being debated, and I think at this moment, really the best answer I can give you is, you'll have to watch which way this is going. I'm not sure at this point anybody can give you a different answer other than an overseas citizenship, which is on the table. In terms of the India-China, yes, we have made some progress. Our relations were really very, very disturbed for reasons I think all of you know. We have made some progress in what we call disengagement, which is when troops were very close to each other, with the possibility that it could lead to some untoward incident. But that's one part of the issue. There are other aspects. The fact is, there are very large number of Chinese troops deployed along the line of actual control who were not there before 2020, and we in turn have counter-deployed. And there are other aspects of the relationship which also got affected during this period. So clearly, we have to see after the disengagement what is the direction we go. But we do think the disengagement is a welcome step. It opens up the possibility that other steps could happen. The expectation after Prime Minister Modi met President Xi was that both the National Security Advisor and myself, we would meet our counterpart. So that's really where things are. What does it mean for the Quad? Look, the Quad, I would say, has a bigger purpose. Think of the Quad. You have 4 democracies, 4 market economies, 4 countries with a strong record of global contributions, all of whom, by the way, happen to be maritime nations, who have found a kind of a common agenda on which to work. This is not a security agenda. The Quad does many things, from connectivity and climate forecasting to fellowships to there are a whole sort of set of activities out here, and in a way you can say, because it relates to your final observation, look, the kind of expectations that the world had from the United States in the 40s and 50s and 60s, they are not realistic anymore. In the United States, irrespective of what happens in the election, the fact is the United States will, its own global contributions, relatively speaking, are going to be less. Now, there will be a deficit. So we have to ask ourselves, do we leave the deficit unaddressed? Is it addressed by somebody with a very different vision of the global order? Or do those who have a sort of a common interest and a common vision actually come together? So the Quad is really option 3, which is 4 countries who feel on many basic issues that they have a common viewpoint working together. And but there is, no question that, just the numbers tell you, if you look at, what were the top 10 economies of the world 50 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, you can see there's a shift from the West. And I think Australian foreign policy has also made those adjustments. And part of our own relationship today with Australia is, we also, for us, many years ago, we started with something called Look East. This was during Narasimha Rao ji's time. And then it kept developing from the ASEAN, beyond the ASEAN. I think today, Modi ji made it Act East. Then we took it further, saying that we need to, particularly engage the Indo-Pacific countries. So my sense is India is looking much more towards the Pacific. More than half our trade, by the way, is actually done east of India. Australia is looking much more towards Asia and the Indo-Pacific. And I think that is one of the reasons today why our relationship is so much stronger. So the last, the curiosity from the cardiologist. Well, you know, I don't know. I'm just thinking maybe there's some formula you and I could do a business on. Sort of a good lifestyle, how to keep your heart ticking. But honestly, I mean, I don't do anything remarkable. I try to be as regular as I do travel exceptionally. But the rest of it, I keep it as normal as I can. The only advice I give, you know, as you get older, you feel a little bit more entitled to give lifestyle advice. I tell everybody, keep fit. You know, this is the only, I mean, it doesn't matter how you keep fit, but at least I take an hour out every day, you know, between yoga, between ideally a competitive sport, because there's nothing like playing against someone to keep you sharp. You know, then you carry it into your work sphere. I play squash. So, but you know, squash depends on different people, up to you. But it's important to stay fit because at the end of the day, somewhere I mean, the heart, yes, but up there too.
Thank you very much, sir, on that happy and healthy note. May we say thank you to you, sir. And I'm afraid, you know, today is Sunday evening, as the minister said, and we know.
I'd like to welcome Jayashankar ji because you come from Delhi University, and I'm from Delhi University. You were in St. Stephen, I was in Gurgaon College. That was the era when Arun Jaitley was the president. And I joined the work studies, and we are from the same year. I hope you're still playing. I was a college captain that time, so I won championship in the St. Stephen College. So I wanted to say 50 years after, I never thought I would meet in this university. After 50 years.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister Dr. Jayashankar and His Excellency Mr. Gopal Bagle ji. Ladies and gentlemen, as we draw this event to a close, it is my privilege to invite the Consul General of India in Brisbane, Mrs. Neetu Bhagotia ji, to deliver the vote of thanks. Can we please make her feel welcome?
Honorable External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jayashankar ji, Honorable Fiona Simpson, MP, Minister for Women and Women's Economic Security, Minister for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Partnerships, and Minister for Multiculturalism. High Commissioner Shri Gopal Bagle ji, distinguished guests from federal and state government, business leaders, members from the Indian community, friends of India, dear students, ladies and gentlemen. A very good evening to all of you. Namaskar. It gives me immense pleasure in delivering this vote of thanks. We are delighted to have Honorable Minister in Brisbane, which happens to be his first ever visit to the Sunshine State, to inaugurate the Consulate General of India. Sir, we all at the Consulate and the entire Indian community are extremely honored to have you amongst us today. Brisbane has a very robust Indian community of 0.12 million, including 15,000 Indian students, and they all were very eagerly waiting for this visit. And we are happy with the opening of this, and they're very happy with the opening of the new consulate in Brisbane to cater to their consular needs. I thank them all for their continued support. With the consulate in place, my entire team will ensure the best of the consular and related services. Inauguration of the new consulate tomorrow will be a big milestone in the relationship between India and Australia, especially the newly formed government of Queensland. I thank Honorable Fiona Simpson, MP, Minister, for being with us today on this special occasion, and we look forward to working together with an aim to take our relationship to the next level. I would also like to thank to Chancellor Peter Verghese and his entire team of the University of Queensland for making it possible to organize this community event. at this beautiful venue. Thank you all for your support and cooperation. I also want to thank the business leaders of Queensland who have been a constant support in building India-Australia economic relations, and hope with the opening of the new consulate, we will take this further in a more structured and sustainable way. Lastly, I would like to thank each one of our community members and students who are present here today, and through this platform, the entire Indian diaspora in Queensland for being one of the strong pillars of this relationship. You all are the living bridge which connects our two great nations together. As we bring in a new era tomorrow with the formal inauguration of the consulate, I once again thank you all for being here today and look forward to working together towards building more stronger India-Australia relations with the support of very able Indian diaspora in Australia, especially in Queensland. Thank you so much. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you so much, Counsel General, for your kind words. We sincerely appreciate your steadfast commitment to strengthen the ties between India and Queensland. Your efforts in promoting cultural exchange and building community connections are greatly appreciated. You reflect the spirit of a welcoming and inclusive community, and your work in supporting India's interest in Queensland does not go unnoticed. And sir, we would love to have you back again and again and again. So thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our formal proceedings. Thank you all for being here on this lovely Sunday afternoon and contributing to the spirit of friendship and collaboration that we celebrate. Please ensure to pick up your refreshments on your way out. And thank you once again for being here. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.